Welcome to the Dogon podcast. I'm trying to drop the pointing myself. I think it's funny. I watch a lot of our episodes, and we're always like,
I love the point.
I know he loves the point, but like got me into it now even more so. And it's like, man, I gotta stop pointing. But maybe people are like, is he talking about me? Is he pointing at me?
It's good for the thumbnail too. So
right. Oh yeah, no, it is. That's what it's all about. Like all these thumbnails. Like if you guys ever see me doing like weird stuff, that's why. It's because I'm just getting a thumbnail ready so that Tristan can clip that stuff, you know. But but yeah, thumbnails are important, and we've had some that our click-through rate's pretty high on.
Yeah, we have a few that are actually really, I think we have one short that's like 6,000. I guess we don't have thumbnails on the shorts, but on the Terrence Howard one, I know that a bunch of people clicked on that. I don't know if it was the name or if it was something in the thumbnail, but something about that video popped. And then we had the Donald Trump Dr. Phil one that did pretty well, and then I think that was just the topic. But I don't know, there's a lot of different things that play into what gets seen on YouTube, and you have to actually craft your videos exactly to how the algorithm works.
Yeah. It's and we're really getting more focused on responding to those metrics.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really why, if you guys wonder like, oh, I thought they were doing episodes where they were gonna like give us all these different techniques of how they did this or how they did that. Well, you guys don't really seem to like those ones.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're just shooting the shit.
We're going to do what the people want to see. And if it's just talking and vibing and just saying what's up, then that's what it is.
And if it's pointing, it's pointing.
And if it's pointing at the screen every single time I want to do it, that's what I'm going to do.
I love it. But yeah, so, you know, today I was just kind of looking through some of the breaking news. You know, it's already getting buried, but I'm curious about the presidential immunity ruling from the Supreme Court. Like, what does that extend to, you know?
Yeah. I don't know.
You know, like, I mean, and from what I heard, it also like included like the individuals from January 6th as well. Like there was a ruling about how they can't, or it's very difficult to prosecute them now or something like that.
Did it say something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't with the presidential immunity, but it was like a day before that. There was something like, or some new ruling that was made from the Supreme Court made it very difficult to prosecute people from January 6th and Trump, I guess.
Yeah.
But then there was another big development that came out that reversed this Chevron ruling, and this is like the coolest thing that has happened in a long time.
What does it say?
Well, the Chevron ruling was like courts basically said that they are going to leave it up to government institutions and organizations to make rules that make sense when there is not a law in place or a law that is specifically identifying some particular action. A lot of people are like, well, yeah, that makes sense. But no, it was like complete destruction of our checks and balances, because it made it to where government institutions and agencies were drafting law with writing policy.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and
actually, that's what I was going to ask. Like, hold on, that sounds like a bad thing, you know?
Yep. And it's really not, because it's like before, it's like we had to have our House and Senate propose a bill and then have that bill be passed and that bill signed into law. And that's the law. And that's what you have to follow. And that's what, you know, you have to adhere to as an individual or as a business. To have this overruled is basically putting the power back in our different branches of government and taking it away from government organizations just wildly making rules and holding people accountable to them as if they are laws when they're not.
And that's not
right.
Yeah.
You know, so to me, that's a big deal. It does weaken federal regulators, and it does weaken federal agencies and government agencies. And that is awesome, because they shouldn't have that power. That power is meant for our
legislators and people who make law.
Exactly. It's not, you know, that's why we have the system we have to vote them into place. They vote on different bills. They get those bills passed through the House or the Senate. They get that, then they get that signed by the president. And then, you know, it's like we have it that way for a reason.
Yeah. I don't think any agency should be able to just create a law out of their ass, you know?
Yeah. And that's basically what they were doing, because, you know,
I've seen it a lot of times too, where people get pushed up on or arrested just because of some policy, you know?
Well, yeah, but see, this rolls into everything, because now we're talking about like EPA guidelines and needing a fishing license. I mean, this bleeds into everything. And I mean, I see this as a way for people to start pulling back on every aspect of regulation, because like in the Constitution, it says no right or freedom will be, you know, turned into a privilege and a fee charged thereof. And that's literally all they've done to so many of our freedoms.
A lot of things have become.
Yeah, they've charged a fee. You have to pay to get a license or to be regulated by a government organization in order to do a lawful activity.
Right. I mean, I get why they have this, but you can't even conceal carry a firearm without having a license or when you're supposed to be able to bear arms, you know.
Yep. And that's starting to be, kicked completely, where it's like, no, we got to go back to, it says shall not be infringed. It doesn't say shall be infringed by a local government regulation. It says shall not be. So like on Friday, this is like a 40-year-old decision. It basically made it easier for government organizations to regulate the environment, public health, workplace safety, consumer protections, and delivered far-reaching and potentially lucrative victory for businesses to be able to sidestep all these garbage policies that were written by non-elected officials and that they were held to. So I think it's really cool. The court's 6 conservative justices overturned the 1984 decision known as Chevron. It basically returns power back to the 3 branches of our government. Billions of dollars are potentially at stake in challenges that could be spawned from the high court's ruling. Like billions of dollars that companies and individuals have had to pay, and that people have had to jump through hoops and do things just because this government organization said so, is like up for grabs again, and probably all going to be thrown out of court.
That's good.
Yeah. And I mean, people, who knows if this is going to be something where people can go back and get things corrected, like, well, hey, I got in trouble for this, but that's not a law.
Yeah.
That's a government regulation policy.
They will make amends for those as well, but
a lot of, there was some people who said, like, the Biden administration, their top Supreme Court lawyer had warned that this move would be an unwarranted shock to the legal system. And I'm sorry, but I think it's warranted. I think it's beautiful.
And it needs to happen like now.
Yes, it's done. It's done.
It already has done.
Yep, it's done. Yeah, they overturned it, corrected a problem from 1984. Yeah, I just don't know how this is going to ripple out, because it's going to be, it literally goes through every the government got lazy and they just were like, well we'll
they
just
have a lot of work to do now.
Yeah, they're like, well, we'll just create the wildlife and game wardens, and then we'll make policies for these game wardens that you have to have this, you have to have that, and you have to have this. Boom, done. That's all of a sudden the new law, even though that nobody voted on that.
Right.
And so now it's like, oh, that's not protected in court. Oh, if a private federal agency enforces a policy as law, they lose their protected immunity. So like if a game warden tries to enforce and again, talk to your lawyer, I'm not trying to give you, bad advice. If a game warden tries to enforce a license of fishing on, private property, and forcefully tries to push that, now that game warden can be independently and privately sued by that individual. He's no longer protected that he's a game warden.
Immunity.
Yeah, you won't have, and most of the time you don't have that anyways, but the government agencies would fall back on their policy, treat it like law, and then you're screwed, So I don't know. I'm excited. I think this is a big deal. I think this is something
huge. That's actually massive.
Yeah, and they like slid it in there. Like everyone's like, oh, what are they going to say about Trump and presidential immunity?
Yeah,
what are they
like a bigger bombshell, like right on top.
Let's just cut this tree down while nobody's looking. Yeah. And it's like, thank you.
That is really cool.
I wonder what it's going to do for like right now, like even like Department of Motor Vehicles mandates through policy that you have insurance in order to operate a vehicle. Well, that's no longer a enforceable law, because it was never a law before. It was a policy.
They're start trying to draft a lot of laws now.
Yeah, and they're going to realize that that's why laws are made the way they are, because they ain't going to go that quick and easy for them.
It's a process.
Yeah, and it's something that people can be like, no, no, we don't want that.
Yeah.
And so
isn't that weird?
Isn't that weird? Like the people have control.
I don't remember having to be able to do that.
Yeah, like, I mean, everything, like raw milk, they create like EPA, like, oh, you can't sell raw milk or raw cheese because it's dangerous, or like FDA, like all these government organizations that have been writing policy and then in basically saying that that's law because it's the policy of that government agency that's overseeing this area of the public sector. All of a sudden that means nothing. It carries no weight. Yeah, I don't know.
That is exciting to me, honestly.
Yeah, it makes me, what about growing cannabis? Like,
I know that.
Literally, like, even like besides Controlled Substance Act,
it's still federally illegal, right?
Yeah, but like certain aspects are not when it comes to like farm bill technicalities. And if it's in a bill and it's been passed as law, that's different. But there's a lot of regulations that are put in place that are simply policy from government organizations, and that stuff is, that's just going to be weird. I don't know if background checks are a federal law. Like, I don't know what this, because there's a lot of state laws that are passed too because of federal policy. Because like the EPA says, if this happens, then we're going to find the individual and the state organization that was not enforcing this federal policy. And now that this federal policy is just something that a non-elected person wrote and it doesn't mean anything in regards to the law, now it's like, okay, this state law that was passed because of this federal policy, is that going to still hold up in court? Because now they can't go back and say, oh yeah, but this federal policy from the EPA says this, that's why this law is that. Oh, well, that law is unconstitutional, so no, it doesn't work anymore. Like, that to me, it's like the ripple through the
We're
court
gonna have to wait and
systems.
see a little bit, and I think it will be pretty quick, honestly.
Oh yeah. Oh, you're gonna see. There's all those YouTube warriors out there who are like, I'm just filming in here. I'm just and they're like trying to get arrested, or like cops are like, hey, I'm doing a constitutionally protected activity, and they're like, and they're going through that stuff, and they're like getting lawsuits, and you always see them. They're like filming police on TikTok.
The auditors and such.
Yeah. You're gonna see those guys go nuts.
Oh yeah, they'll love it. They'll love that shit.
I know. It gave them the freedom now to actually abide to the law and be protected by it.
Yeah.
To me, that's one of the biggest things. Like, I know, there was a case about January 6th and the rioters that day and Donald Trump and whether or not they're able to be prosecuted. I don't know the details of that fully. I haven't looked into it yet, but apparently it made it more difficult to prosecute them. And then there was the presidential immunity ruling from the Supreme Court just yesterday, middle of the day, where it's like, no, you can't prosecute a sitting president, or you can't prosecute a president for things that were done while he was and it doesn't protect him from everything, like some things in the past and stuff like that, but there was definitely protections extended to him. And I thought those were like both really big, but nothing compared to this 1984 reversal of Chevron.
That is incredible, really.
I mean, I cannot wait. I can't wait for my firm meeting today to talk to the...
I know. I want to hear what the lawyers have to say about it.
So do I. Yeah, maybe I'll come back and report and just kind of get some, get an overview of what they think, because, I mean, that is going to be wild.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That is just going to be so cool. And just to see, like, a lot of these, most people don't realize, but these government agencies, these policies are written in a way that make them money.
Yeah.
That you have to pay for this or you get fined for that.
And I want to reach out if there are any people of the law or lawyers or people who know more about this topic. Let us know, more implications or interesting things about it,
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely, we're going to start doing call-ins and calling to different people and actually just having like phone listeners, like back in the day, like radio call-ins and stuff.
Right.
So we want to start doing that. So definitely let us know. We'd love to have you on the show, talk back and forth about this. If you're in the local Texas area, to us, I know Texas is huge, so it could be like 7 hours away.
There's a lot of people here.
If you're in the northern Texas or Texoma area, get in touch with us, because we'd love to have you on. We got more mics and headphones, and we can just sit you here and we can talk a little bit and get into detail about exactly what this means. I think this is going to be the biggest move of our decade.
Oh yeah.
The biggest shift of power back to the people I have seen in my lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of the biggest changes I've seen in recent law ever.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's one of the main reasons why I started to become an anarchist and an anarcho-capitalist.
Yeah.
Because I saw this when I was younger.
They can literally draft things up and do as they please, and nobody has anything to say about it.
And you have to follow that government regulation.
That nobody voted on.
And it's just like, man, I don't know. That is exciting to me.
That's not a real fucking democracy at all.
Yeah. Well, again, I always correct people on this. We are not a democracy. Republic.
Sorry. Republic, whatever.
I know. It's not your fault. Everybody says it. Even Tucker Carlson says we're a democracy. Like, what are you doing, Tucker? Why do you keep saying that? Why do you keep saying we need to protect our democracy? What are you talking about? We're not a democracy, Tucker. We're not a democracy. Like, how can all these people, and that's what worries me about Tucker being like a plant from like the powers that be, like the same people who are controlling Biden and Obama and Clinton. I really think, like, is Tucker a plant because of the fact that he has such a opposite stance to our current narrative, but at the same time is instilling and really perpetuating this democracy BS. Democracy is extremely dangerous. Extremely dangerous. It is mob rule. That's all democracy means, is mob rule. Majority rules. So if majority of people want segregation, we have segregation. If majority of people want every guy to have a shaved head, every guy has a shaved head.
That's strange.
That's weird. Like, that's not how it should be. That's why we are a republic. A republic protects the minority, and if one person doesn't want to shave their head, they don't have to shave their head.
Yeah.
Even if everybody else wants to, that one person can be like, I like my hair, I'm going to leave it the way it is. And they're protected. Not only, it's not that they are just like not bothered, they are protected to where other people are stopped if people are trying to convince them to shave their head, or
because we have freedoms and rights and such.
Or if people are like, I won't sell you a car unless you shave your head.
Right.
Discrimination. So we have those laws and that set up in place because of the fact that we're a republic, and we may be a democratically elected republic, but we're still a republic.
And I can see that. I mean.
And it's like, that's a big distinction. And there's a lot of people who get mad at me and they're like, oh, that's a talking point of, I can't remember what they said. It's like this right-wing organization that apparently they're really pushing that we're not a democracy, we're a republic. And they're like, you're just saying their talking points. And I'm like, I don't even know who they are.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I've been saying this since I was a kid.
You can come to your own conclusions and have other people still think the same thing, you know?
Yeah, that's okay.
That's still a real plausible thing.
Yeah, you know, and it's just because I watched a video when I was really young about forms of government and transitional forms of government and semi-permanent forms of government. And everything is always in transition. But yeah, it was very clear that like a democracy will always go to an oligarchy, and an oligarchy will always go to some type of dictatorship. And an oligarchy is a small group of wealthy or influential people that are controlling things in the background.
Yeah.
And that's already happening because we've been sliding towards a democracy. So we've seen that development already, that transition.
I know there's some weird shit going on, man.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you know, whether you believe in any type of shadow government or not, it's definitely clear that we have branches of our government that hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, are disappearing and just going into like black holes, and huge amounts of structure and internal growth are happening with these different branches of our government without any oversight or without any review of the American people or House and Senate or anything. So it's like we already have these independent factions within our government that are funding themselves, policing themselves, growing, and changing how things are done. And now with this Chevron reversal, that's going to slow so much of that down. So much. Huge. No more can the CIA or the FBI or the EPA or anybody draft a policy and treat it like law.
Right.
It's over, baby.
It is.
It's exciting.
It's going to work.
I know. Like, again, like Department of Motor Vehicles and all this stuff. Like, how is that going to go?
See.
Because they got lazy. You know, like you can look, there's a lot of laws that were set up about certain things and certain things that had to be done a certain way. But over the last 20, 30 years, 40 years, it's really gotten lazy for our government organizations. So like, yeah, we'll just make it a policy within the government body, and then people have to follow that. So
it's not necessarily an unwarranted shock. I think it's more of you guys don't want to fucking do all the work to fucking undo all this bullshit.
Well, it's because of the fact that
it hides all the dumb shit you're doing.
Yes, and it's going to make it to where like they can't just make something happen to get something that they want. They have to go through the process. Yeah, it has to be voted on.
Yeah, it has to be a real process.
And then if the people don't like it, and you have members of our House and Senate pushing it, then those people won't get reelected.
Right.
And then that law won't get passed, or it'll be overturned by other people that we elect. And it's like, oh my gosh, we have some of the power back. Like, so if you haven't looked into it or read about it, I encourage you to look up the 1984 Chevron case, look at the most recent ruling, and try to understand what that's going to do to our legal system. I think it's fair what Biden's top, constitutional or Supreme Court lawyer said. I think it's fair.
Yeah.
That is a shock to...
Yeah, it is a shock. Not necessarily unwarranted, though.
Yeah, not unwarranted, though. Definitely warranted. Like, the American people have just served the federal agencies with a warrant, and we are raiding their houses right now, and we are getting rid of all the garbage that they've tried to shove down our throats.
Bitch.
Yeah, so I definitely think it's warranted. I definitely think it's something that was needed desperately, and I love how it was just like secretly done, like all this other stuff going on, and they're just like...
And it's like, holy shit, hold on a minute. I thought this was cool, but
that just changes everything. So, I mean, I don't even know, like, I'm just trying to think of all the different regulations and all the different, like, even like gasoline and fracking and like, I don't know, like oil production. Like, there's so many things that now are not stopped.
Yeah, I want to hear from anybody who knows more about the topic, but...
And, I didn't even think about this.
What?
Okay, so right now, people think like the EPA sets rules and it protects the environment.
Yeah.
But what the EPA will do is they'll set rules like, well, you can do this, this, and this. And if you dump the toxic material into this water only at this amount for this amount of months or at this time of the year, then it's okay. And if you read a lot of these, it's like, yeah, you can dump toxic waste into these rivers and kill all the fish, but it can only be during this time when they're not breeding. And then we got to wait a certain amount of months, so it kind of dilutes.
That's strange.
Yeah, no, no joke. You look at a lot of these EPA regulations and they actually ruin the environment rather than protect it. Those companies were protected by those regulations because they're like, no, we followed these rules. So now you have these farmers. Yeah, you have these farmers, these landowners who are now going to be able to sue these companies if they follow this policy written by the EPA and are breaking federal law.
They're not protected by that anymore.
That's cool. That's cool. So these big corporations, this crony capitalism setup where it was like, you scratch your back, I scratch mine. Okay, we'll donate money and we'll help the EPA here. And then the EPA is going to write this regulation because we need to dump 50 barrels, but then they write regulation. You can't dump more than 60 barrels. And it's like, and they're like, cool, and everyone thinks like the EPA, oh yeah, look, they stopped them. No, they just wrote the regulation exactly how these companies needed it so that they could still destroy the environment, except now they're protected by immunity within the federal government because they're following the policy that is law of the land.
Yeah.
And now, man, so that's just, that's so exciting. I'm going to look more into this. We might have to do a whole episode on this.
Right.
This is huge.
I mean, that is really interesting.
But yes,
I want to get more information and come back.
Yes, definitely. And maybe I can get maybe we can get a lawyer. Maybe we can get
some insight.
Yeah, maybe get a member of the government in here. But I mean, I'm excited. You guys never know what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Never know what you're going to get here, but
it's pretty interesting.
Right. But yeah, just make sure you go to dogonpacks.com. Gosh, any day now. We're probably within 10 days of those pre-orders getting mailed out.
We have probably less than a week, I'm hoping. But
less than a week. But I'm saying 10 days max.
Yeah. I don't know. But we'll see you later.
Have a good one, guys.
The hell?
Our music cut out. Sorry. I'm just going to mess with it a little bit. This is a different ending now.